I still remember the sound of gravel under my shoes, the smell of salt from the Oregon air, and the way the sky felt like it was about to collapse. I was standing on the side of a coastal road, my hand gripping a single crumpled $2 bill. It was damp from the morning rain and from how tightly I'd been holding it. Beside me sat my grandmother Ruth, 83 years old, heart-failing legs swollen from the long drive, and eyes still wide from what had just happened. We'd been left there. No car, no suitcase, no phone signal, just us and $2. "Figure it out," my mother had said as she shoved the money into Grandma's hands. Like it was charity, like it was a joke. Then she slapped me hard across the face when I tried to help. The sting of her hand still lingered on my cheek. But worse than that was the silence from everyone else. My brother stood by the trunk of the car looking away. My aunt whispered something to her husband. No one said a word. And then the SUV drove off. Tires spinning, exhaust billowing, my mother at the wheel like she was running from something. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Not yet. Because I remembered something my grandmother once told me when I was 10 years old. "Don't raise your voice, Rowena. Raise your value. That's how you win." So I stood there still as stone with the wind tugging at my hair and my grandmother's frail fingers clinging to my wrist. And in that moment, as my family disappeared down the road, I realized I wasn't going to beg. I was going to remember. I was going to act. But first, I had to survive. 3 hours earlier, it had all felt so normal. It was the last day of our annual family vacation, something we did every July at the same gray rental cabin overlooking the cliffs. Mom insisted we keep the tradition even though everyone hated it. The morning was heavy with fog and tension. I'd noticed it when Mom Audra was packing her bag, slamming drawers harder than necessary. Her jaw clenched like she was chewing on a secret. Grandma had asked for help getting her socks on. Audra rolled her eyes. "You're not an invalid, Ruth," she muttered. "I helped her anyway. I always did." In the kitchen, I heard my uncle and cousin laugh at something my brother said, probably another jab about how Rowena's too soft for this world. I'd learned to stop listening, but something felt off, like something was about to break. And it did. As we loaded the last of the bags, I noticed Mom was missing. So was Grandma. I found them on the other side of the rental cabin. Mom was gripping Grandma by the arm, dragging her like dead weight. Grandma's walker was nowhere in sight. "Mom, what are you doing?" I asked. Audra didn't answer. She pushed Grandma onto the gravel shoulder like you'd drop off an old couch someone forgot to haul, and then she pulled out 2 $1 bills. "Here," she said, stuffing them into Grandma's hand. "Figure it out, Ruth." I froze. My mouth opened, but no sound came. Finally, I found the words. "You can't do this!" Audra turned to me, her face sharp with rage. "Don't start, Rowena. You want to end up like her, clinging to people, waiting to be rescued." "I'll take her back in the car," I said. "She's sick. She needs to go with us." And then came the slap. So fast I didn't see it coming. So loud it echoed. I stumbled backward, eyes wide, my face burning. "You're not bringing her?" Audra hissed. "You want to babysit an old woman? Go ahead, stay here. Live her life." And just like that, she left. With them, my cousins, my brother, my aunt, all of them in the SUV. Gone. The road went silent again. I looked down. Grandma was crying without tears, just the soft shiver of her body, the twitch in her hand still holding the $2. I knelt beside her, placed my arm around her shoulders. "It's okay, Grandma," I whispered. "I'm not leaving." And I meant it, even though I didn't know what we'd do next, even though the fog was thickening, even though I had no money. But I had something else. Because before they left, I hit record on my phone. I had her words. I had the slap. I had the evidence. And my mother, so sure she'd silenced me with shame and a backhand, had no idea what was coming. She had no idea what I was capable of. Not yet, but she would, very soon. My relationship with my mother had always been conditional. Growing up, it was clear who the favorite was. My older brother, Mason, the legacy, as she liked to say. Captain of the football team's scholarship to a state college and the golden boy who could do no wrong. And then there was me, Rowena. Too sensitive, too quiet, too average. You're not built for much, she once told me. I was 12. I learned early that attention in our house wasn't given. It was earned. And even then it came in two forms, praise or punishment. And praise was rare. Unless, of course, you were Mason. Mom would beam at him during church, tell everyone how he was going places. When I won a poetry award in 8th grade, she said, "At least it wasn't for drama." Grandma Ruth was the only person who saw me, the only one who remembered my birthday without a Facebook reminder. She showed up to every school performance, even when Mom didn't. She'd bring lemon drops and whisper, "You're my favorite secret." When my parents divorced, Mom became colder, sharper, like she was determined to make the rest of us pay for Dad's absence. She blamed Grandma for everything, said Ruth enabled weakness, called her a relic, a burden, but she kept bringing her along on family vacations for appearance, not affection. Because when the church ladies asked how her mother was doing, she needed to say, "She's with us." That was her brand dutiful daughter. Until it got inconvenient. By the time I was 25, I had stopped trying to earn her approval. I was working 2 jobs, taking night classes in social work, and still living in a shared apartment. Mom called it a waste of potential. "You're not ambitious, Rowena," she once told me at Thanksgiving. "You're clinging to scraps." I wanted to scream that I wasn't clinging, I was surviving. But what was the point? I knew better. Her world was built on control, image, and manipulation. You didn't win arguments with Audra. You survived them. Grandma, meanwhile, had gotten frailer. Her memory had started slipping in and out. She had good days, days where she'd hum old songs while stirring tea, but the bad ones were becoming more frequent. On one of them, she wandered outside barefoot and got lost for 3 hours. I was the one who found her, not Mom. "You're not doing her any favors by playing nurse," Mom snapped. "She needs professional care." "I am her care," I replied. That was the beginning of the end. When I offered to take full responsibility for Grandma legally, financially, emotionally, Mom laughed. "You can't even take care of yourself." So I stopped talking. I stopped explaining. I just started planning. Which brings us back to the trip, that stupid family vacation to the Oregon coast. I knew she'd try something. I just didn't know how far she'd go. But I came prepared. Because that morning, while helping Grandma into the car, I saw something in Mom's eyes. Not tiredness, not frustration, something colder, final. So I turned on my phone recorder and slipped it into my sweater pocket, just in case. And when she shoved Grandma out of the car, slapped me in front of the others, and drove off, I had it. Every word, every sound, even the slap. She had no idea. Later, I would replay that audio to myself while sitting on a dusty curb beside a rundown gas station with Grandma leaning against me. It wasn't to hurt myself, it was to remember the moment I stopped being afraid of her. I wasn't the broken one. She was. And she had just given me all the proof I'd need to show the world. But that proof didn't come with food, or shelter, or warmth. And before I could make her regret everything she'd done, I had to get us off that road. Alive. The wind picked up not long after Mom's SUV disappeared over the hill, taking with it my brother, my aunt, my cousins, all of them. No one stayed behind. No one asked if we'd be okay. No one even looked back. I knelt beside Grandma Ruth on the gravel shoulder. She was shivering slightly, staring at the 2 crumpled bills in her palm, like she was still trying to make sense of what had happened. "Grandma," I whispered, brushing her shoulder gently. "We need to move." She didn't respond right away. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I recognized the look in her eyes, fogged, distant, fragile, like her mind had slipped into a memory she didn't want to be in. "We can't stay here," I said louder this time. "Come on, let's get you up." She nodded slowly, mechanically. I helped her stand, wrapping her arm over my shoulder. She was lighter than I remembered. Too light, like her bones were barely holding her together. We stumbled together along the edge of the road. My shoes crunched against loose gravel, and every few steps Grandma's knees buckled. The road stretched endlessly ahead with trees on both sides and no visible traffic. We were somewhere between the cabin and the main highway, but I didn't know exactly where. There had been a small gas station back near the fork we passed earlier that week. I prayed it was close enough. Just a little farther, I told her, though, I didn't know if that was true. We're gonna be okay. At one point, Grandma collapsed again. I crouched beside her, gripping her hands. They felt like paper. Rest a minute, I whispered. I sat next to her, shielding her from the wind, with my body trying not to cry. My cheeks still throbbed from the slap. I touched it lightly, then laughed not out of humor but disbelief. She really hit me, right in front of everyone, and they all just watched. That image stayed with me, my aunt standing with her arms crossed, her eyes not quite meeting mine. Mason looking away like he didn't know me. That moment frozen in my mind, replayed like a cruel little movie. How long had I accepted this treatment as normal? When had I learned to expect nothing? I'm not doing this anymore, I said aloud, mostly to myself. I'm done. Grandma stirred beside me. Her lips moved faintly. I leaned in. What is it I asked? Sorry, she whispered, barely audible. No, I said, choking back tears. You didn't do anything wrong. Don't you dare apologize. We sat like that for a while, her hunched over in silence, me trying not to break. Then a noise, a faint hum, tires on gravel. I stood waving frantically. A gray pickup truck approached and slowed. The driver, a man in his 60s with a faded baseball cap, rolled down his window. You two all right? He asked, his voice cautious. I nodded quickly. My grandmother needs help. We were left behind. He looked between us, saw the bruising on my face, saw the fear I wasn't hiding anymore. I can give you a ride to the station, he said. Hop in. I helped Grandma into the passenger seat and climbed into the back. The warmth of the truck felt like a miracle. We didn't talk much on the way, just silence, heavy and fragile. At the gas station, he helped me get Grandma settled on a bench. He offered to call someone, but I shook my head. No phones, I said. I just need a minute. He nodded, then walked inside. I sat beside Grandma, wrapping my arm around her again. She leaned into me this time, like she'd finally realized she was safe. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the $2 bill. It was smudge-stained from the gravel and rain. But I held it like it meant something. Because it did. It was a receipt, a record, the price of her dignity, the price my mother had put on our lives. And it wasn't just money, it was motive. It was what Mom thought we were worth. $2. And that was the moment I decided she'd pay. Not with money, with truth. She left us to disappear. But we were still here, and I was done being quiet. The warmth from the truck ride faded fast once the door shut behind us. The gas station was small, practically a relic from another time. Peeling paint, buzzing neon sign that flickered with a stubborn hum. But it might as well have been a cathedral to me. It meant shelter. It meant somewhere to think. Grandma sat hunched over in a cracked plastic chair near the station's corner window, her hands resting on her lap like they didn't belong to her. Her skin looked even paler under the yellow flicker of the overhead lights. The clerk behind the counter didn't ask questions. He just nodded at us, offered water, and gave me the bathroom key on a long wooden stick without saying a word. Maybe he'd seen this kind of thing before. Maybe he just understood the weight of certain silences. I walked into the restroom, locked the door behind me, and stared at myself in the mirror. There it was, red across my cheek, the faint outline of a hand. Her hand. The same one that used to brush my hair when I was little before praise turned to silence, and silence turned to slaps. I splashed cold water on my face and stared into my own eyes. You're not going back, I whispered. She doesn't get to win. Back in the lobby, Grandma was trying to sit upright, sipping water from a paper cup, hands trembling. I kneeled beside her. We'll rest here tonight, I said. In the morning, we'll figure something out. She didn't answer, but she didn't say no either. That was enough. I had $24 in my wallet, a few emergency bills I kept behind my ID, no credit cards. I'd left my bag in the car Mom drove off in. I asked the clerk if there was a motel nearby. Half a mile up the road, he said. You'll pass the diner on the left. Can't miss it. It ain't much, but it's open. I nodded. We'll walk. He looked out the window, then back at us. It's getting dark. I know I said. We left just before sunset, the sky bleeding orange across the trees. I draped my hoodie over Grandma's shoulders and carried her purse on my back. She moved slowly, one foot pause, another foot, but she didn't stop. I think some part of her knew we were walking away from something we could never return to. The road stretched ahead like a memory you don't want to revisit. My legs ached within minutes. My arm wrapped around Grandma's waist, throbbed from supporting her weight. But I didn't let go. Each car that passed was a possible threat, not a rescue. I flinched at headlights, tightened my grip, kept moving. By the time we reached the motel, the sky was ink black. The sign above the office blinked vacancy in sputtering red letters. It looked like a place people disappeared into, not checked into, but I didn't care. The clerk behind the desk didn't bat an eye at our appearance. He slid over a key room 5 cash only. I handed him all I had. He didn't ask questions. Inside, the room smelled like mildew and bleach. The bed creaked when I helped Grandma sit down. The carpet was damp near the bathroom. One towel, one bar of soap, one chance to catch our breath. I helped her remove her shoes, laid her down gently, then sat in the lone chair beside the window. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stared at the $2 bill I'd smoothed out and laid on the nightstand. The thing that had started this. The thing that meant nothing and everything. And I remembered what Mom said before she slapped me. "You're always too soft." She thought that was a weakness. She had no idea it would become my weapon. Because softness is what made me stay behind. Softness is what made me protect Grandma. And softness is what gave me the clarity to start planning what came next. Mom wanted silence, obedience, disappearance. She was about to get something else. That night, while Grandma slept, I pulled out my phone and reviewed the audio recording again. Her voice, clear, cold. "Figure it out, Ruth." Then the slap. Then the sound of the SUV pulling away. I clipped the audio, saved it under a new name, Debt Unpaid. I had proof. I had motive. And most importantly, I had fuel. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about making sure she never did this to anyone again. The motel room was silent, except for the low hum of the wall heater struggling to fight the chill. I lay on the floor beside Grandma's bed, a scratchy blanket pulled up to my chin, watching shadows shift on the ceiling. I couldn't sleep. Not because of the ache in my arms or the soreness in my legs, but because I knew what had to happen next. Grandma stirred in the bed above me. I sat up quickly, reached for her hand. "I'm here," I whispered. Her eyes fluttered open slowly. She blinked a few times before settling on my face. "Rowena," I nodded. "Yeah, it's me." She reached out weakly, brushing a hand against my cheek where Mom had struck me. Did she really leave us? The question shouldn't have broken me, but it did. "Yes," I said, forcing the words out. "She did." Grandma closed her eyes again. Her face was unreadable, somewhere between heartbreak and resignation. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "No," I whispered. "Don't. You've protected me more than anyone ever has. Now it's my turn." She didn't respond, but her hand squeezed mine gently. That was all the permission I needed. I waited until she fell back asleep, then got out of bed and sat at the small table near the window, with my phone, a pen, and the $2 bill in front of me. That bill had been a joke to my mother, a mockery of our worth. But in my hands, it became a symbol, a receipt, proof that silence had been bought and paid for. And now, I was going to turn it into her undoing. I opened my notes app and began typing slowly, carefully outlining everything. The slap, the abandonment, the years of emotional neglect, the favoritism toward my brother, the way I'd always been treated like the background character in a family I was supposedly part of. I added the photos I'd taken of Grandma slumped on the gravel shoulder. I added a screenshot of my call log 3 unanswered calls to my brother's 0 callbacks. And finally, I uploaded the audio clip. My mother's voice, her cruelty, her crime. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet. Maybe post it, maybe send it to a journalist, maybe hand it to a lawyer. But I knew I wouldn't sit on it. Not anymore. That night I slept next to Grandma again. My phone rested beside the $2 bill on the nightstand like a loaded weapon. The next morning, the motel clerk let me use the office phone. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. "Hello," came a familiar voice, tight controlled. "Uncle Dean," I said. There was a pause. "Rowena, I need help." Another pause, then, "Is this about your mother?" I looked down at Grandma resting in the lobby chair beside me, wrapped in a borrowed blanket. Her eyes were closed, but her hand was in mine. "Yes," I said. "It is. Uncle Dean had always been the one outlier in our family. He left the state after a big fallout with Mom years ago. I never knew the full story, only that she refused to mention his name at the table. He arrived 3 hours later in a faded red truck that looked like it hadn't been washed in years, but ran like a dream. He barely said a word when he stepped out, just hugged me tight and nodded at Grandma. "She can stay with me," he said simply. "I've got space." I held up my phone. "I've got work to do." Back at the apartment I hadn't seen in a week, I plugged in my phone, sat down at my desk, and opened a blank document. I titled it, "How $2 Made Me an Orphan." And I wrote. For 3 days straight, I wrote. Every memory, every cruel moment, every birthday where I was invisible, every family trip where I was the chauffeur, the cook, the ghost. I posted it anonymously at first on a local community blog. Then it went viral. The story spread fast. A girl left behind, a grandmother abandoned, a $2 insult, an audio proof, thousands of comments, people horrified, people outraged, people who knew what it was like to be the forgotten daughter. And then something happened I didn't expect. One of the people who saw the story was my mother. Her voice came through on voicemail 2 days later. I let it play on speaker as I sat beside Grandma in Uncle Dean's guest room. "You've embarrassed this family," her voice snapped. "You've ruined your brother's scholarship. Do you even realize that the scouts pulled out after they read what you wrote?" There was more, a lot more. Rage, guilt-tripping, accusations. I saved it all. And I added it to the post. She wanted silence. She wanted control. But what she got was exposure. It's strange how revenge doesn't always feel like fire. Sometimes it's ice, slow, calculated quiet. That was me now. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't raging. I was planning. Mom had always controlled the narrative. She was the saint in the community, the doting mother, the volunteer at church bake sales, the woman who held our family together. No one saw the slap. No one heard the cruel words behind closed doors. Until now. The post I'd written, anonymous at first, was suddenly being shared on every local Facebook page, then Reddit, then picked up by a small journalist from a local podcast that specialized in hidden family scandals. And I'd given them the recording. Within a week, the title of their episode was trending $2 and a lifetime of silence. I didn't need to say it was my mother. Everyone knew. Small towns aren't built on privacy. They're built on whispers, and the whisper trail had turned into a roar. She tried to fight it. She posted her own statement online, something about estranged family members with mental health issues. A few of her friends posted in her defense, but none of it mattered. Because the truth echoed louder than her lies. The mortgage lender called her twice. The house. It had Grandma's name on the deed. She'd quietly transferred it years ago for tax reasons, thinking no one would challenge it. But now that I'd filed for legal guardianship over Grandma, and with medical records and the audio in hand, it was game over. My lawyer moved swiftly, faster than I thought possible. Within a few days, we had an emergency injunction blocking Mom from accessing Grandma's finances. No more draining accounts, no more selling off property. It was public record now, and I made sure people read it. I emailed the story to the local news station. I posted updates. I kept it factual, clean, almost clinical. This is what happened. This is how she responded. This is what I'm doing to stop it. I didn't scream. I didn't plead. I made her watch as the mask slipped. But the real blow that came when I filed the civil suit. Not for money, for accountability, emotional abuse, elder neglect, financial exploitation. The moment the paperwork was served at her front porch, caught on camera, shared by a neighbor who recognized the process server from their HOA, it was over. I knew it because she called again. This time she didn't yell. She cried. "You don't understand, Rowena." Her voice cracked. "I did what I had to. We were struggling. You don't know what it's like being responsible for everyone." "You weren't," I said coldly. "You were responsible for yourself. And you failed. You're punishing me." "No," I said. "I'm revealing you." There was silence on the line. Then she whispered, "You've ruined me." I almost felt something, but not pity. Relief. "You did that yourself," I replied. And I hung up. That night, I stood in front of the mirror in Uncle Dean's guest bathroom. My face looked different now. Not older exactly, but certain, like I'd stepped out of something dark and never planned to go back. In the other room, Grandma was sleeping, her breathing steadier now. The color had started to return to her cheeks. She smiled more, said my name softly sometimes when I brought her soup or tucked the blankets tighter around her feet. I still carried the $2 bill. I had framed it, not to remember the insult, but to remember the promise I made that day on the side of the road. She has no idea what's coming. Now she did. And I wasn't done yet. I was filing to take over medical power of attorney next, followed by full conservatorship. There would be hearings, depositions, maybe even press. And through it all, I would sit there silent, steady, a presence she couldn't ignore. Because when they tried to silence you with $2, you don't scream. You let the truth do the talking. The first hearing was held in a modest courtroom that smelled like old paper and cleaning solution. Not grand, not dramatic. But for me, it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, toes curled over the drop. I had rehearsed my statement in front of the mirror a dozen times. I wore the same gray blazer I'd interviewed in years ago, the one my mother called too boring for a girl. It fit differently now. Or maybe I stood differently in it. She was already inside when I arrived, sitting upright, lipstick perfect, her hair pinned up the same way she wore it to weddings and funerals. She didn't look at me, not once. But I watched her, and I saw it. The stiffness in her hands, the twitch in her jaw, the slightest flicker of dread when the bailiff called my name instead of hers. The judge began. My lawyer outlined the case simply calmly. No frills, no tears, just facts. On June 9th, the respondent left her 83-year-old mother on the side of a rural road with no transportation, no shelter, and no access to assistance except for a $2 bill. I glanced across the room. Mom's lips were pressed together like she was holding in a scream. The judge asked if I had evidence. "I do." I pulled out the photo Grandma on the gravel curled in on herself like windblown paper. Then the recording. Mom's voice cold and detached. "Figure it out, Ruth." I played the slap audio next. There was a shift in the room after that. Not loud but palpable. A rustling of discomfort. A shifting of posture. The kind of silence you feel in your teeth. Her attorney tried to object, tried to spin it. "Your Honor, this is a family matter gone awry. Miss acted under stress, financial and emotional. She regrets her choices." "Does she?" I asked, standing. The judge didn't stop me. I turned toward the bench and laid the final card on the table. She transferred Grandma's home into her own name 6 weeks before that trip. Then she emptied her personal account 42 withdrawals in 3 months, small but cumulative. Grandma didn't even know. I walked to the desk and unfolded the final document. Grandma's handwriting, wobbly but unmistakable. A letter naming me as her health proxy, dated months before the slap. She knew who I was, I said, even when she didn't. Mom didn't speak, didn't move. Her lawyer's hand hovered near her elbow like she might fall. The judge cleared his throat and looked down at the bench. "In light of these testimonies and supporting evidence, guardianship is hereby transferred to Rowena Clark. The court further orders a financial audit and temporary freezing of all related assets." There was no cheer, no fist pump, no courtroom drama, just the sound of a gavel and the silence of a mother who finally lost control. I walked out of that room without looking back. That night, I sat on the edge of the motel bed staring out the window at the parking lot. Grandma slept soundly for the first time in days, her face softer, like she wasn't bracing anymore. The framed $2 bill rested on the nightstand. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. She left us with nothing. I built something out of it. But what now? Was this revenge? Was it justice? Was it enough I didn't know? Because while my mother's house sat under financial review and her social circle slowly vanished, I felt hollow. Not victorious, not triumphant, just still. Uncle Dean knocked gently on the door later that evening. He handed me an envelope, no note, no words. Inside was a photocopy of an old family photo, me age 10, holding Grandma's hand at the lake. Mom stood in the background, her eyes on my brother, her smile wide for him. That day I remembered I asked her if I looked pretty. She'd said, "Don't be vain." I folded the photo and placed it behind the $2 bill in the frame. Let her stay there too, in the past behind glass. The emotional fallout didn't come in one moment. It came in fragments. An old neighbor avoiding me at the grocery store. A cousin sending a vague, lukewarm text, "Hope everything works out." And then a letter mailed, not emailed, from Mom. 5 pages of handwritten blame. "I gave you everything. You were always jealous. You've destroyed this family. No apology, no admission." I didn't respond. I didn't even finish reading it. I lit a candle and fed it to the flame page by page until nothing remained but ash. Some debts you repay with fire, some with silence, and some with your absence. In the weeks after the hearing, the world didn't change overnight. There were no balloons, no celebrations. No stranger stopped me in the street to say I was brave. The town kept moving the same way it always had, slow, predictable, and quiet. But I had changed. I'd traded the dull ache of being overlooked for the sharper, cleaner edge of certainty. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for my mother's approval. I wasn't hoping she'd turn around and remember that I existed, that I was kind, that I was worth something. I already knew. Grandma and I settled into a routine in Uncle Dean's small guest house behind his property. It wasn't big, but it was warm and it was quiet. The first night we moved in, I made her tea, tucked a blanket around her legs, and read from one of her old books, the kind with faded covers and yellowed pages. She smiled, not a big smile, just a soft, content one. It was the kind of smile that told me she felt safe. That was enough. I had a part-time job, now nothing glamorous, front desk at a community center. But it paid the bills, and the staff didn't look at me like I was made of scandal. Just another woman rebuilding something with her bare hands. And that felt like a miracle. Every so often, I'd still see Mom's name mentioned online or whispered between pews at church. I didn't engage. I didn't respond. She hadn't tried to contact me again. I figured she'd finally realized the game was over. She still had her house for now. But the audit was slow, and the legal process even slower. Grandma's accounts had been secured. The townhome frozen under court order. Her social standing, once polished to a shine, now had a permanent scratch. She'd never apologize. I understood that now. I didn't need her to. Some evenings, I'd walk to the bluff near the beach, the same one from that last morning of the vacation. I'd stand there and stare out at the sea, cold, gray, endless. Sometimes I brought the $2 bill with me. I never unfolded it anymore. I just held it. It wasn't a weapon now, it wasn't a scar, it was a reminder of how low we'd been dropped and how far we'd climbed back. One Saturday afternoon, as I was sorting through Grandma's old paperwork, I found something unexpected. An envelope marked in her handwriting, "For Rowena, if anything ever happens." Inside was a note, written years ago. "I know the others don't see you. I know how hard you try. I see it, I see all of it. Tears welled up before I reached the end. I'm proud of you. And I'm not afraid, not as long as I know you're out there. Stay kind, stay strong." I didn't cry often, but that day I let myself. Not because I was broken, but because I was whole. We planted a garden behind the house that spring. Nothing big, just tomatoes, herbs, a few stubborn sunflowers that bent sideways in the wind. Grandma liked to sit in the sun, her fingers brushing the leaves like she was blessing them. Sometimes she'd hum old songs barely louder than the breeze. I never asked if she remembered everything. It didn't matter. She was here. I was here. And the rest? Well, that was hers to forget or keep. One evening as I folded laundry, Uncle Dean stopped by with a newspaper under his arm. "Front page," he said. I took it slowly. The headline, "Local Woman's Financial Exploitation Case Expands into Full Investigation." Her name wasn't bolded, but it was there. Miss Wren. A few quotes from legal reps, mentions of probate irregularities, talk of more families stepping forward. One line at the end caught my breath. Community members say they're shocked, but some say they aren't surprised. I folded the paper without reading the rest. She was finally being seen. For real. And me, I didn't need to be seen anymore. I was already known. By the people who mattered. By myself. Later that week, I visited Grandma's room as she was drifting off to sleep. I kissed her forehead, sat down beside her, and whispered, "I love you." Her fingers curled around mine. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. I used to think family meant forever. That blood was thicker than disappointment. That if you just tried hard enough, stayed quiet enough, useful enough, obedient enough, eventually they'd love you back. That was before the slap, before the gravel, before the $2 bill, before I watched a woman I once called mom throw away her own mother like garbage and expect me to thank her for the ride. But this story, this isn't about her anymore. It's about what came after. It's about how we build again, with what we're left holding. Even if all we're left holding is $2 wrinkled dollars. Sometimes I stare at that framed bill and wonder what my life might have looked like if I had let it go. If I'd said nothing, walked away, swallowed the shame like I'd done every time before. But I didn't. And maybe that's the only difference between who I used to be and who I am now. I stopped waiting for them to do right. I did it myself. If you're still watching, still listening, maybe your story isn't mine. Maybe you weren't abandoned on a roadside. Maybe no one slapped you in front of strangers. Maybe your pain wears a quieter face, the dad who never called, the sister who always took, the mother who only loved you when it made her look good. Pain doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. You're not enough. You're the afterthought. You don't matter. But I'm here to tell you, that's a lie. You do matter. Even if the people who raised you couldn't see it. Even if you were the forgotten one. Even if the only proof you ever had was a worthless $2 bill. There's a strength in surviving, yes, but there's something stronger in choosing to rebuild anyway. Choosing to love again even when you've seen love twisted into leverage. Choosing to care again even when your kindness was once used against you. Choosing to protect the ones who protected you even when it means standing up to the people who never did. That choice, it's yours now, and maybe, just maybe, you'll choose like I did. Not for revenge, but for closure. Not to break them, but to stop letting them break you. I didn't write this to get sympathy. I wrote it so someone out there might stop blaming themselves for the moment their family failed them. I wrote it for the quiet daughters, the tired granddaughters, the women who carry too much for too long. I wrote it so you'd remember. You are not disposable. You are not invisible. And your silence is not owed to anyone. Grandma passed peacefully 8 months after that vacation. In her sleep in her own bed with a full stomach, warm hands, and dignity intact. I held her hand through the last breath. And when it was over, I pressed that $2 bill into her palm one final time. She didn't take it with her. But I like to think she felt it, understood it, knew what it meant. That I kept my promise. That she was never trash. That she was never alone. I didn't invite anyone to the funeral. No cousins. No aunts. No hollow smiles from people who once watched her be pushed to the ground and said nothing. Just me. One white flower. One photo of us at the lake. One shovel of soil. It was quiet. Simple. Honest. Everything my mother never gave her. Everything I could. The house is still small. The job is still modest. But the silence doesn't hurt like it used to. It feels clean now. Like fresh snow. Like something ready to be built upon. Some nights I sit on the porch with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders and a cup of tea cooling in my hands. And I smile not because it's easy, but because it's mine. Because I survived. Because I made it out. And because I kept that $2 bill. not as a wound, as a weapon, as a warning, as a reminder that this story, it wasn't about what she gave me. It was about what I did with it. They left us with $2. I built a life from it. What will you build from what they left you?